Well, good morning to all of you. I want to greet you in the name of Jesus, and I'm honored that you all are here. On May 2nd, 1994, American singer Martina McBride released a single from her album, The Way I Am, called Independence Day. The song has been regarded as McBride's signature song. It won at the 1995 Country Music Association's Award the Song of the Year, and in 2024, Rolling Stone ranked it at number 45 on the top 200 greatest country songs of all time. The song was written by Gretchen Peters and tells a story from the perspective of an 8-year-old girl with an alcoholic father that would beat her mother when he was drunk. On the 4th of July, the girl notices another bruise on her mother's cheek and decides to go to the town fair. While she is at the fair, her mother lights their house on fire and burns it to the ground with her drunk father inside. The third verse in the song goes like this: "While she lit up the sky that 4th of July, by the time that the firemen come, they just put out the flames and took down some names and sent me to the country home. Now, I ain't saying it's right or I ain't saying it's wrong, but maybe it's the only way." And the chorus goes, "Let freedom ring, let the white dove sing, let the whole world know that today is a day of reckoning. Let the weak be strong, let the right be wrong. Roll the stone away, let the guilty pay. It's Independence Day." The title of my message this morning is Let Freedom Ring. This is a rather gritty and dark song. And while none of us would condone murder, there's a certain amount of relatableness with it and appeals to our sense of justice. The weaker, more vulnerable women striking back at the abusive man. It's this evening of the scale, the correction of an injustice, of an imbalance. Our justice system uses the statue of the Liberty Lady that's blindfolded and is holding the scale in balance. It's my hope that none of us here are the victim of domestic violence, but I also know that we all have experienced some level of hurt in our lives. We all have been wronged, some greater than others, but we all have felt that wrongness. I think we all have also felt the need for revenge, the eye for the eye, the balancing, and the evening out of the score. Jesus warned us of these offenses in Matthew 18:7 when he says, "Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to that man by whom offense comes." So what is an offense? An offense is an unfair or wrong action against somebody. In Matthew, the word that is translated offense is also translated other places a stumbling block, something that causes us to trip or to fall. There are many levels of offense. There are serious or malicious offenses, like in the song, this direct intent to harm. Some of them are just rude or unkind. They have an intent to degrade or maybe to humiliate. Some of them are emotional offenses. Someone acts out in either anger or frustration. Then we also have unintentional offenses where it may be due to a lack of awareness or maybe just the fact that we are fallen human beings. Offenses also come from a variety of different places. We have people that are distant from us, people that we know but we do not have a direct connection with. That could be someone like politicians or leaders, people in authority, that while we do not interact with them directly, they may offend us in some way. There are also people we have brief contact with. Maybe it's a stranger that is rude to us, the person that cuts in front of you, the person that gestures rudely to you as he cuts you off. Then we have people that we rub shoulders with on a regular basis. These are coworkers, our neighbors, and people that we know. And then we also have friends, people that we know and interact with personally. And then even closer, we have family. We have parents, we have children, we have spouses and siblings. And I'm also going to add in there that we have our local brotherhood, our brothers and sisters that we are in community with. I'm going to focus on these people that are closest to us this morning and the offenses that come from those interactions. These are people that we trust. These are the people that we want to be safe and that we should be safe with. But along with that closeness and that proximity to each other, these people also have the greatest capacity to hurt us because we trust them. And a lot of times it's the place where we let our guard down a little bit. But I think if we're all honest, we have all experienced a level of hurt or offense in these situations. Parents that make mistakes with their children. Children that walk away and have no respect for their parents. Spouses that hurt and misunderstand. Siblings that, even though you may be blood related, struggle to get along. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this hurt and these offenses that come and that we are faced with in our lives? I don't think I have to convince any of you not to murder people or the people that have offended you. As Christians, we are well acquainted with the command that we are not to do evil for evil. We're commanded not to eye for an eye. We're very well acquainted with the command to forgive instead of revenge. Forgiveness is one of the most foundational beliefs of Christianity. God forgiving us forgiving others. In fact, Jesus said to Peter came to him and he said, "Lord, how many times, if my brother sins against me, how many times do I need to forgive him? Up to 7 times?" I was curious why Peter said 7. Maybe he was at 6 and he only felt like he had the capacity for one more. Or maybe he had done it 7 times and he was tired of it. But Jesus said, "I do not say up to you 7 times, but he said up to 70 times 7, which comes out to 490 times. Forgiveness is the process of releasing negative feelings like resentment or anger towards someone who has wronged you. It is a conscious decision to let go of the hurt and to move forward, even if the other person does not apologize or wants to reconcile. Forgiveness is one thing to say, but it is much more difficult to do. And I want to talk a little bit about how do we do it? How do we forgive? What do we do with the hurt and the pain that is the cause of offenses in our lives? What do we do with our desire for revenge and justice? I want to look at the story of Joseph in Genesis, and I'm going to go briefly over the story. It's a story we all know very, very well. And instead of reading everything, I'm just going to sort of tell the story and then look at his response to the wrongs and the offenses in his life. I'm going to start in Genesis chapter 37. Joseph is 17 years old, and he is not the youngest. He is number 11 of 12 but he seems to suffer from a little bit of the youngest child syndrome. And if there's any youngest here, I apologize. We do love you, and we also think that you get away with everything that us older ones got in trouble for. He has this, he started out, it didn't start out great. The first problem that develops here is he tattled on his brothers to his dad. They were off doing something. He came back to Dad and said, "Dad, they are off doing this." And that did not endear him to his siblings. The other thing that complicated their relationship was that he was his dad's favorite. And his dad gave him this special coat of many colors that signified his favoritism to Joseph. Then Joseph begins to have these dreams. And he has this dream about there was these sheaves and that were bowing. There was 11 of them, if I remember correctly, and they were bowing down to his sheaf. And he felt the need to tell his brothers about this. He said, "Hey, I had this dream, and your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brothers were outraged. They said, "Shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. He doesn't learn very quickly, and he has another dream. And in this dream, there were 11 stars that bowed down to him, but not only just the 11 stars, the sun and the moon also bowed down to him. So not even is his brothers annoyed at him now, but now his father is also annoyed. And it said his brothers envied him, but his father rebuked him, and his brothers envied him, but it said his father sort of kept the matter to himself. Soon after, his dad sends Joseph away. His brothers are off in a different area caring for their animals, and he sends Joseph to go check on them and see how they're doing. And so his brothers are there camping with their animals, I'm assuming, and they see the coat. Here it comes. Here comes Joseph. And it doesn't inspire warm, fuzzy feelings for them. In fact, it's actually a lot worse than that. He says, they see him coming, and they said, "Here comes the dreamer." And they were actually really, really angry that he was there. And their hatred took action. And some of them wanted to kill him. They said, "You know what? Let's just off this guy. Let's get him out of our life." Fortunately, one of his older brothers said, "Okay, we don't have to kill him. There's this deep well. Let's chuck him in there. Let him rot there for a little bit. Maybe that'll teach him a lesson." And his intention was to later come back and take Joseph out and deliver him from his brothers. While he's gone, this caravan of Ishmaelites comes by, and his brothers have a brilliant idea. They say, "You know what? It's good we didn't kill him, but we still can get rid of him. Let's jerk him out, and let's sell him to these Ishmaelites." And so that's what they did. They take him out and they sell him, and he is taken away by these traders. Then they had to figure out what to do with the coat. What to tell their dad. One problem created another. And so they said, "Well, let's kill an animal, let's shred this coat up a little bit, let's put blood on it, and we'll send it back to Dad and say, 'Dad, we're so sorry, but your favorite son had a misfortune, and he has been killed by a wild animal.'" In chapter 39, Joseph is sold to Potiphar. He is taken to Egypt, and he is sold as a slave to Potiphar. Potiphar is a captain of the guard, an important official in the government there, and he buys Joseph as his personal slave to help around the house. So that doesn't go well either. He does his job very well, but the Potiphar's wife entices him and says, "Hey, why don't you lie with me?" And he says, "No, I cannot do that." He said, "In fact, I cannot sin against God or against your husband." And she is irate that he refuses her advances, and when her husband comes home, she says, "Your slave tried to rape me." And Potiphar is instantly angry, and he gets Joseph and he throws him in jail. And so now, not only is he a slave, but he's also a prisoner, unjustly accused and thrown in jail, ultimately for doing the right thing. In chapters 40 and 41, Joseph is there in prison, and in the meantime, these dreams are back, but this time, Joseph is not the one having the dreams. Other people are having the dreams, and they're coming to him and getting them to interpret these dreams. There's the two people that the Pharaoh had thrown in jail because he was upset with them, the butler and the baker. They have the dreams. Joseph interprets them, and they come true. And when I can't remember, I think the baker is the one that got his head taken off, and the other one got restored. And when the butler got restored, he told him, "Hey, stick a good word in for me," but he promptly forgot. Eventually, Pharaoh has a dream, and he's unable to understand it, and that's when the butler's memory is jogged, and he said, yes, I know the very man. So they bring Joseph out of prison, he interprets this dream, and he finds favor with the Pharaoh, and he is appointed to a very, very high position in the government, and was given the task of preparing the country for a famine. So the famine strikes. Food is scarce. And his brothers, his father and brother, are experiencing this famine as well. And so eventually they hear of this food that's available in Egypt, and they decide to go and purchase this food. And so Joseph's brothers arrive, and they come and interact with Joseph, and they do not know who he is, but he knows who they are. And so he begins to test them. He gives them food, and then he puts their money back in. He runs them through these tests to see how they feel about their brother. At one point, in order to test, he wants them to bring his youngest brother, his blood brother, Benjamin, back with them when they get food next time. And so he keeps his one brother as collateral. And he says, "I'm going to keep one of you here, so you return back to me and bring your brother." So when they return, they didn't want to, but eventually they convinced their dad to allow them to bring Benjamin with them, and they returned to Egypt. We're now at chapter 45. And when they leave this time, he puts a cup, this really special cup he had, he put it in Benjamin's bag, and then sent them away. And then he sends his officers after them, and they say, "How dare you steal from Joseph?" And they said, we haven't stolen. That's ridiculous. In fact, if you find it, I think they said, with whomever your servant it is found, let him die, and we will also be my Lord's slaves. So they take him back, and they open the bags, and here it is in Benjamin's bag. And this is the final test for Joseph that he is giving his brothers. And his brothers, I think it was his brother Judah, offers himself as a slave in the stead of Benjamin. I want to look here at chapter 45 at Joseph's response to his brothers. Chapter 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near me." So they came near, and he said, "I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there will still be 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God has sent me before you to prepare a posterity for you on the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. This is an incredible response that Joseph had to his brothers, these people that have wronged him. And as I've read this story, it seems it's almost, he's like on a different level from us. Like, this guy's cut from different cloth. How did he seem to have this level of integrity that is not normal? But I don't think he was. He wasn't on a different plane than us. In fact, I think he experienced it the same way in which me or you would have experienced it. He was human just like you and me. And just like him, we can respond in the same fashion to the hurt and the wrong in our life. I want to look first at Joseph's grief. It says earlier, when he saw Benjamin, his mother's son, his heart yearned for his brother, and he sent him away and went somewhere into his chamber, and he said he wept. Also, when he told his brothers who he was, he said, "Send everyone out besides my brothers." And he said he wept aloud, so loud that everyone else in the house heard him in his grief. This was a very, very strong emotion and a very strong response to this meeting with his brothers. I think Joseph was in his weeping. He was grieving the hurt and the pain that his brothers' actions had caused. They experienced, he was grieving the hatred that he felt when they wanted to kill him. He was grieving the rejection of being sold as a piece of property and being chained and riding away from life as he knew, a slave. He was grieving the abuse, the degradation of slavery, the beatings. He was grieving the betrayal, the punishment for doing right, forgotten by those he had helped. He was also grieving the loneliness of being separated from family. But not only was he grieving what was, I think he was also grieving what should have been, what was stolen from him by other people's actions. Brothers aren't supposed to act that way. They're not supposed to sell you. They're not supposed to hate you. And many times, when we experience hurt that is close to us, it is hurtful because it should not be. And I think this grief and this grieving is an important first step in this process of forgiveness. It is acknowledging our loss and also coming to terms with our own fallenness and the fallenness of others. Grief has its place and is important, but we can't stay there. This grieving is a means to an end. It is the sorrow that is felt from wrongdoing. But it's important for us to realize that it is not a means to an end, because when grief becomes unresolved, when it becomes something that perpetuates, it moves from grieving and becomes resentment. And when we move from grief and then we move to resentment, we begin to build our own prison. And brick by brick and bar by bar, we wall ourselves in and wall ourselves off from other people. So what do we do with this grief? How do we resolve our pain? David Kessler, a well-known grief expert on grief, said, "Grief demands a witness. I don't know about you, but many times when I am wronged, I feel the need for validation of my hurt and of the wrongdoing that has been committed against me. And many times we seek that validation or that acknowledgement from either the offender, but many times the offender may not even know, may not be willing to accept their offense, or maybe they're just not even around. In this situation, Joseph was far away from he was isolated from his family and his brothers. This becomes very, very problematic. Because there's a saying that I have found very, very much to be true in my own experience, but also in the experience of others, is hurt people hurt people. And in trying to find our validation and acknowledgement of the hurt in our life, we inadvertently perpetuate that hurt on somebody else. So where does that leave us? Here we are, we have this hurt and this wrong, and we've had this grief. So where do we go? Where does that leave us? Are we doomed for life with wounds that never heal? There is someone who can and will understand. I want to read from Isaiah 53. This is speaking about the Messiah. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as we were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not see him. Surely he hath borne our griefs, and he has carried our sorrows. If you have experienced hurt and loss or wrong in your life at the hands of other people, and you're experiencing that grief of what could have been or what should have been, I invite you to take it to the one person that is able to understand and to hold it. We can't bear it. We can't, and neither can other people. But God can. So what about justice? What about this balancing of the scale? Our God-given sense of justice. That when we hear wrong, there's something that rises up within us and saying, and a desire to amend and to make right. I want to look once again at Joseph. He is in a position here when his brothers come to him of 100% control. He has the resources, he has the ability, he has the position to punish them in any way that he would see fit. He is in their hand. They're in his hand. Yet he didn't do it. He didn't do it now in this first meeting with his brothers, but neither did he do it later. And I want to turn to chapter 50. This is after his father has died, and his brothers, when they saw that his father was dead, in verse 15 it says, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil we did him. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, before our father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you to please forgive the trespasses of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we are your servants. I want you to pay close attention to Joseph's response. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about, as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. God has not given us the capacity or the ability to avenge, to balance the scale. And Joseph had an understanding of this. And he said, vengeance belongs only to God. In Romans 12, 17, and 19, it says, repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place for wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. God has promised that he will ultimately balance the scale. Justice will be served. And when we leave that to God, when we take our need for revenge, for justice, for fairness and balance, and we bring that to God, along with our hurt, and say, God, this is yours. This is not my responsibility. And giving that up, we find relief. We find relief from a burden that we were not meant to carry. And it's that idea of your shoulders being able to drop when we leave it with God. Revenge is a heavy, heavy burden. And it's also a very, very costly burden. In the song I read at the beginning, it talked about when she lit up the sky, like the 4th of July. And it says, they just put out the flames. And it says, and they took me to a country home. Even in that song, the writer is communicating that in her revenge, the mother also lost her life. Not only did it cost her life, but it cost her life for her daughter, as her daughter knew. She experienced the loss of her father and also the loss of her mother. I want to impress upon you the cost of unforgiveness. It may cost you your life here on earth, but it will also cost you your life in eternity. And so when we feel the need for revenge and we let resentment and bitterness build, we have chosen to destroy ourselves. Jodi Picoult, I'm not sure if I say her name correctly, is quoted in her book as saying, when you begin the journey of revenge, start by digging 2 graves, one for your enemy and one for yourself. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 14, Jesus said, if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. In closing, the line in the song at the end is said, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right. Or I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm not saying it's right, but maybe it's the only way. But the Bible says it's not. But it says there is only one way. On July 4th, in 5 days, our nation will celebrate Independence Day, which commemorates the ratification of the Declaration of Independence by the Second Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, establishing the United States. And they're in the process of being free from British rule. I invite you this morning to think of your own freedom, or maybe the lack thereof. Maybe you're hurting. Maybe you've been wronged. Maybe you're experiencing the grief from that. Or perhaps you find yourself in a prison of resentment and bitterness. And slowly by slowly, destroying your life. The wounds feel like they may never heal. I invite you to bring that hurt to God. I invite you to share your grief with Him and to leave that with Him. Bring your sorrow. He has promised to carry it. I also invite you to give Him the responsibility for vengeance and for justice, and to give that to God. He has promised to balance the scale. And in doing so, I also invite you to experience the gift of forgiveness, and also to share that with somebody else. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks our prisons of hurt and resentment and opens the door to freedom and to healing. Today can be your Independence Day. Let freedom ring. Is there any response?